Hello everyone, welcome to LUKMAAN IAS. Today we are going to have the Hindu analysis of 5th May 2021. So let us see which are the important articles in today's the Hindu newspaper. Yes, these are the important articles for mains purpose and for prelims purpose. Let us take overview first of all these articles. An issue of lives versus livelihood on page number 6, this editorial page article. It is talking about the dilemma which is faced whether to protect lives or protect livelihoods of the people while dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. So from governance perspective, this is the dilemma, this is the challenge faced by the administration or the government. So from governance and social justice perspective, the article is discussing the plight of migrant laborers and lack of let's say social safety net or legal safeguards to these section of population. So from that aspect we have to understand social justice. Okay. Next, a COVID blot on India's foreign policy canvas. So the context of the article is it is talking about the consequences of this COVID-19 pandemic, especially this second wave, and the impact of this pandemic on India's foreign affairs or foreign policy decisions in near future. Okay, so this is very important. Again, there can be direct question in GS2 paper, international relations. India reiterates need for global cooperation to beat COVID-19. So here there was virtual summit between the heads of the government or prime ministers of India and UK. Bilateral summit, we can say that. So in that, India reiterated need for global cooperation to beat COVID-19. So outcome of this virtual summit, we are going to have follow up on bilateral relations between India and UK. Then how does a oxygen concentrator help? So the working of this oxygen concentrator, we have to understand from science and technology perspective, COVID-19 related development, right? So yes, specifically prelims related, we have to understand the working of oxygen concentrator. Then G7 grouping. So recently the ministerial level meeting of G7 countries, they talked about a common agenda or approach to deal with aggressive China. They advocated such a common approach. So what is this G7 grouping? Informal grouping of these Western developed countries, rich countries, we can say that. We have to understand here from prelims perspective. International organizations, regional forums, international forums. Fine. So let us, yes, lastly again on day-to-day basis we are having COVID-19 related developments at national stage. Okay. Now first article, an issue of lives versus livelihoods. On page number 6, editorial page, the article is talking about the plight of migrant laborers or overall the workers, laborers working in the informal sector of the economy. Okay, so yes, the article is talking about them and the impact of curfew or the partial lockdowns or total lockdowns in some of the states on these people. And yes, once again we are seeing the reverse migration of these migrant laborers in the country. Okay, so before understanding that, let us try to understand what is migration and reverse migration. Migration happens because of certain pull factors and push factors from certain regions to the destination regions. Okay. So yes, there can be pull factors like yes, good opportunities of standard of life, employment opportunities, educational opportunities, good health services. All these things are pull factors, while push factors like unemployment in the let's say the state, living state, or we can say the poverty, and yes, the lack of agriculture productivity, all these things lead to push factor from the source region, right. So this is called as migration. In general, largely rural to urban migration is generally called as migration. But because of COVID-19 pandemic, what is happening is there is reverse migration. that is from urban areas to rural areas, especially when we have seen last year during the lockdown time period, there was economic contraction, the economic activities slowed down, and that led to unemployment, especially in informal sector of the economy. And now these migrant laborers, we can say largely unskilled laborers, they started moving from urban areas to rural areas. The similar kind of phenomenon can be seen in recent time also because of partial lockdowns or total lockdowns in some of the states like Maharashtra, Delhi, and yes, these are also industrially progressive states. That's why they attract large migrant laborers from eastern states like yes, Odisha, Bihar, West Bengal, even UP. Okay, so yes, we have to understand their plight because of this COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns. Okay, so the question here is, the state administrations or central government both are dealing with at present to protect the life of the people. Yes. At the same time, they are ignoring the issue of livelihood of the people in the policy decisions. This is how we have to understand the context of this article. Okay, yes, let us try to understand the impact of lockdown on migrant laborers working in informal economy. Yes, job losses, loss of rented accommodation because of lack of income, then lack of sustainable income and savings to ensure food, transportation back to villages or any other emergency including falling victim to COVID-19. So basically they are lacking social safety nets, okay, health insurance, or we can say that emergency cash transfers by the government to ensure food or shelter, temporary we can say sustenance because of such emergency situations. Okay, so this is the impact. And the migrant labor not priority of the government policy. Yes, last year we faced the same issue. However, the government has not taken any attempt to have official estimate of such inflows or outflows of migrant laborers, either incoming or reverse migration. Okay, so this is how it shows that the policy considerations have least priority to the protection of livelihood of the people. Then significance of migrant labor in urban areas, we have to understand that migrant laborers, especially working largely almost 90% of these labor work in informal sector, they provide cheap labor to manufacturing units and cheap services to the household, yes, in the service sector. So both in manufacturing sector and service sector, they are providing cheap labor, and therefore their contribution in the urban development is very important, however unrecognized. Okay, so this is how we have to understand their significance. No legal safeguards. The present situation is that Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act 1970, though it conferred the legal status to the casual labor by providing a mechanism for registration of contractors engaging 20 or more workers. However, it was never effective. Okay, so yes, contractors never, let's say, registered for such workers, having such 20 or more workers under him, working him. At the same time, contractors exploited these workers in urban areas, looking at their illiteracy, along with that lack of awareness about their rights. All these things are exploited by these mediators or contractors. Now the government has come up with labor reforms with Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020, along with other such labor codes. 4 total labor codes have been passed, replacing all such earlier acts. Okay, now it seeks to regulate health and safety conditions of workers in establishments with 10 or more workers. Earlier there was condition for 20, now it is talking about 10. However, we do not know whether it will be effective or not, because when we talk about the studies of implementation and effectiveness of earlier acts, it shows that they have not been effective. Okay, so this is how we have to understand the legal safeguards are not there, social safety nets or those safeguards are not there. At present, the only relief they are receiving in urban areas, especially through Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. You need to remember that the government has revived now to deal with this second wave. This particular scheme, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, it provides 5 kgs of cereals, food grains to each household. Now almost 80 crore people are going to benefit from this scheme. Free food grains, 5 kgs of cereals to 80 crore people in India. Okay. Along with that, yes, all state governments are also taking such important decisions, like Delhi government recently announced that they will provide free food grains to all ration card holders as Delhi citizens. Okay, so yes, this is good development, but this is the only development. We can say this is firefighting approach. Yes, largely this is to deal with the present situation, that the loss of livelihoods the people are facing in the country. Okay, so what kind of question we can expect here? Discuss the issue of lives versus livelihoods faced by the government in taking policy decisions to deal with COVID-19 pandemic situation in the country. Okay, so yes, this particular discussion that we had right now, this is very important, social justice and governance GS2 paper. Fine? Okay. Now, moving on to next, a COVID blot on India's foreign policy canvas. A very important article, though article is written in a very pessimistic way, or we can say the critical analysis is done. However, it is also important because surely the pandemic will have some negative consequences on India's foreign policy in near future. Let us try to understand how. A very good statement talking about the direct consequence of pandemic. India's claim to regional primacy and leadership will take a major hit. First thing. Second thing, that its leading power aspirations will be dented. And third thing, it will accentuate its domestic political contestations. Okay, so this is from these three aspects we have to understand the consequence of COVID-19 pandemic on India's foreign policy consideration. Let us try to understand. First one, regional primacy. Now basically our regional primacy or regional let's say leadership, that was the role played by the India was based on, first thing, let's say economic help to India's neighbors. Second thing is historical ties, and third thing is political influence. So India's regional primacy and leadership was based on these three factors. Yes, the economic help extended to our neighbors, political influence and historical ties with our neighbor and regional countries, regional neighbors. Okay, let us try to understand what is the present situation. Yes, political influences are not working in recent times with our neighborhood. So along with that, the economic health, the country is at present dealing with COVID-19 situation and all the resources are diverted to deal with this situation that country is facing. So there is little left for economic health that is to be extended to our neighboring countries in the region. Along with that, in such situation, the historical ties may not work because these neighboring countries are basically aspiring developing countries like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and therefore they will seek another option. That's why we can understand that they may further seek help from China. Okay, for their economic development, economic growth, also to deal with COVID-19 situation in those countries. Okay, so this is the first thing, it will dent India's regional primacy and leadership. The second aspect that we have to understand here, dent on leadership power aspiration. Yes, in 2015, our external affairs minister S. Jaishankar has said that India seeks to be a global leader or leading power, at least in our region, Asia. Okay, these are the let's say aspirations that India is carrying in last, let's say, 5 to 6 years. Now there will be dent on such aspirations. Why? Because first thing, though we can understand that Western countries are helping us at present, however, after, let's say, such help and India deals with the present situation, these countries like US, UK or Japan, Australia, they may feel that India is not ready for such kind of leading, to be called as leading power in the world, as India is at present crumbling down to deal with this COVID-19 situation. The second aspect that we have to understand here is that India may not have enough resources to deal with, or we can say ramp up its defense, let's say, equipment establishments and to enlarge its defense power. Okay, at present our all resources including defense resources are dealing with the COVID-19 situation that we are seeing today. Okay, so that's why again it is dent it on the leading power aspirations that India is having. Okay, so from this aspect, the second problem that we can understand in foreign policy, domestic politics may act as an obstacle in foreign policy in future. Why? Because yes, there will be like UP elections, assembly elections in 22 sorry, then there will be general elections in 2024, Lok Sabha elections, and therefore the present government, central government may look or concentrate on the domestic issues. We know that already the country is facing the rising unemployment, poverty, and there is declining economic growth in the country because of COVID-19 pandemic. So the country will focus on these domestic issues now. The central government will focus on these domestic issues, and that will surely act as an obstacle for our foreign policy priorities. Okay. And yes, lastly, the conciliatory approach towards China is most likely in future, near future. As present, we can see that India or the government is not emphasizing on, let's say, or any kind of allegations towards China. We have seen for last year's standoff, India-China standoff. That means surely India has started taking conciliatory approach towards China. So from being the competitor in vaccine exports in last few months with China, now India is taking help from the other countries. This is a dent on India's compatibility, or we can say as a competitive power in Asia with China. Okay, so India will not seek any kind of enmity with China in near future or worsen the present situation. Along with that, surely it may impact on India's strategic autonomy in policy decisions. Now this is very important. What do you mean by strategic autonomy? Strategic autonomy means India or India's political consideration in foreign policy will not be influenced by one or other country or group of countries. Okay, this is called as a strategic autonomy, and therefore now in future, as we are taking aid from these countries, we may not be able to negate the criticism by these countries in future. Okay, along with that, India may find very difficult to, let's say, decline any proposal for defense partnership with US in future, because at present already India has moved far ahead for defense cooperation with US, and to some extent it has reduced defense ties with Russia, we can say specifically, or any other country. So in future India may not be able to say no for such kind of defense cooperation with US. This is let's say impacting strategic autonomy and up till now that India has maintained in foreign policy consideration. So this is the important discussion. We can expect surely the question in GS2 paper international relations. Along with that, those who are having PSIR optional subject, you can take input. What kind of question we can expect here? Critically analyze the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on India's foreign policy in near future. While dealing with such question, at least write 20 to 30% some positives also. Positives in a sense that it provides opportunity to strengthen regional groupings like SAARC. Okay. So SAARC is the regional grouping for South Asian countries with 8 members. At present, we know that South Asia is the least integrated region in the world, and this can be explored. At present, we can see that there is positive let's say relations, improvement in the bilateral relations with Pakistan, India-Pakistan, which earlier proved as an obstacle, the problems in bilateral relations. Now India can explore more and more cooperation and progress in this SAARC grouping, and therefore regional medical or health infrastructure can be strengthened. Regional health infrastructure can be strengthened, and further let's say in terms of connectivity and other such economic partnership can be explored. Fine. So in this manner you can deal with this question. Okay. Now moving on, there was a virtual bilateral summit between India and UK, and the outcome of this summit. Some factual things you need to remember. India-UK bilateral relationship. Yes, India reiterated need for international partnership to deal with pandemic and called for stronger trade cooperation with UK. The declaration to expand the vaccine partnership between two countries came after the several major Indian companies pledged to commit major financial investment in UK. The biggest among them is Serum Institute of India. Along with that, Prime Ministers announced that both sides will negotiate a comprehensive free trade agreement FTA that will double bilateral trade by 2030. Try to remember these facts. Along with that, two sides also discussed concluding interim trade agreement to ensure early gains of trade. They agreed to deepen defense ties with focus on Indo-Pacific region under India-UK Defense and International Security Partnership Framework. Fine. So these are the developments largely for vaccine cooperation, vaccine production, Indian companies to invest in UK for expanding its vaccine business. Okay. Next, now specifically for prelims examination, how does the oxygen concentrator works? Let us try to understand how does a oxygen concentrator helps. There is explainer in the Hindu newspaper. Let us try to understand pictographically also. So yes, the oxygen concentrator consists of two important parts. One is compressor and second is sieve bed filter. Compressor and sieve bed filter. Okay, you can see now the air entering into a motor and compressor. This is working through electricity, right? Then there is heat exchange and there is surge tank. Now through this surge tank, there is 4-way solenoid valve. Through this, the oxygen or the air is entering into sieve beds, molecular sieve beds. Okay, so these are basically made up of molecular sieve beds. Through this, the nitrogen and oxygen is being separated, and oxygen is under pressure saved here in the product tank. There is pressure regulator here to this tank, and ultimately it is given through the flow meter adjusting valve. Now this will be almost around 88% to 95% pure oxygen supplied. Now this particular oxygen concentrator is feasible to let's say can work at home as against to those oxygen cylinders built through let's say industrial oxygen. Okay, so how does it work? The concentrator squeezes atmospheric air and also adjusts the pressure at which to be it is delivered. This sieve bed is made up of material called as zeolite that separates the nitrogen. You can see this, the sieve beds, it is made up of zeolite material. Remember this fact for your prelims examination. It is made up of zeolite material. It separates nitrogen, and this particular cycle continuously works with the electricity supply. Okay, so this is the working of oxygen concentrator that are available at household level in the market. Okay, so yes, now moving on to next article. G7 grouping. Recently G7 countries discussed on how to form a common front towards aggressive China. Okay, aggressive and assertive China, that's why it was in news. Now let us try to know some basic information about this G7 grouping. Yes, a group of 7, an intergovernmental organization consisting of 7 wealthiest countries: Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK and US. Okay, so Australia is not there, try to remember this. It is intergovernmental organization that was formed in 1975 by top economies of that time as an informal forum to discuss pressing world issues. It is not specifically for dealing with economic issues, rather all pressing world issues. At the same time, the heads of the government of the member state as well as representatives of European Union meet at annual G7 summit. Okay, so both heads of the government of the summit, group as well as representatives of European Union. G7 was known as G8 for several years after original 7 were joined by Russia in 1997. However, Russia was expelled from this G8 grouping in 2014 when there was annexation of Crimea. Okay, annexation of Crimea region of Ukraine in 2014. There were many sanctions put by US on Russia at that time, and now at present again it is called as G7 grouping. Now another important information you need to know about is formation of FATF by G7 summit. So in response to mounting concern of money laundering, the Financial Action Task Force on Money Laundering was established by G7 summit that was held in Paris in 1989. Okay, so means FATF was formed or established by G7 summit in 1989. Okay, so you need to remember this. This particular FATF maintains grey list and black list of countries, and accordingly those countries which involve in money laundering or terror financing, they are put in these watch list, grey list and black list. Okay, yes, this information is important about G7 group. Now COVID-19 related developments at national level, let us try to know about this. Yes, deaths of COVID-19 patients due to lack of supply of oxygen to the hospital is a criminal act and not less than genocide by those who have been entrusted the task to ensure continuous procurement and supply chain of liquid medical oxygen. This is the observation made by Allahabad court. You need to remember some of the observations made by High Court and Supreme Court regarding, let's say, the government's inability our administration's inability to deal with COVID-19 situation at present. At the same time, Delhi High Court directed center to show cause why contempt should not be initiated against for failing to comply with orders to supply oxygen to Delhi for COVID-19 patients. Earlier, the Delhi High Court had directed central government to provide the required oxygen supply by midnight of 3rd May. Now, the central government again failed to ensure the oxygen supply required by the Delhi city, and that's why now Delhi High Court has directed central government for show cause notice, we can say, for contempt. Citing the increased load on laboratories, the ICMR, Indian Council for Medical Research, issued advisory on testing during second wave of COVID-19 pandemic. This includes recommendation of advising against repeating RT-PCR test on those who have tested positive. Along with that, RT-PCR tested on healthy individuals undertaking interstate travel may be completely stopped to reduce the load on laboratories. This is the advisory by ICMR regarding RT-PCR testing. Okay, so these are the important developments at national level. Fine? Yes. These are the important articles from today's The Hindu newspaper. For further information on editorial discussion classes or ED classes wherein in-depth analysis of mains related issues and articles is done by Ansari Sir and team, you can contact LUKMAAN IAS. Thank you.